wanted to use
really short.
This is Nat Nasworth. I'm in the Washington, D.C. studio of the Christian Post, and I'm with Jason Jones, the author of a new book, The Race to Save Our Century. Here we go, right? And Jason, so in this book, you talk about the 5 ideologies of evil. So what are those?
Well, the 5 ideologies of evil are if you look at the 20th century from 1914 to 2014, it's a century of democide, genocide, and war. And we can really boil this down to 5 ideologies of evil, which is number 1, racism and nationalism, which is kind of obvious to everyone with Hitler. And then you have utilitarian hedonism, which we see today in the United States. We have total war. You know, in the 20th century, civilians, the difference between a civilian and a combatant was completely obliterated. Then you have radical individualism, the idea of the individual separate from his community, no sense of solidarity. And then utopian collectivism, probably responsible for the most deaths in the 20th century from, Soviet Union, the Khmer Rouge, and Mao's China.
Okay, and another thing I have to figure out is how a filmmaker ended up writing a book. So where did the ideas for this book come from?
Well, that's a good question. You know, my films really are my attempt to inoculate the world from these ideologies of evil, specifically by all of my films, from Bella to Crescendo to The Stoning of Soraya M., really seek to show the incomparable dignity and beauty of the human person, which to me is the foundation of a culture of life, love, and beauty, that every human being deserves full legal protection from the moment of their biological beginning throughout all of their life. That is what is unique about our civilization, and when that is gone, we should expect the rest of it eventually to be washed away. And the idea for this book came to me when I was an undergraduate at the University of Hawaii, and I pitched my department on making a movie trailer on why you should major in political science. And I came up with this trailer, much like the trailer for the book that exists right now, that you can find on YouTube if you search Save Our Century. And I just wanted to pour the horror of the 20th century into 2 minutes to create a sense of urgency in young people at my school and why they should major in political science, because ideas matter. My leftist faculty laughed at me. But in putting together that trailer, which they never used, it really gave me the focus for my life. I realized that we were careening towards another century of horrors. And so I set out that how could I order my life in a way to create a humane society for my posterity. And it was that sort of adventure I set out, and I was working on this book. When I started the book, I was an Ayn Rand objectivist, atheist libertarian. And the original title of the book was Generation X Manifesto, The Race to Save Our Century. And I wanted to come out in 2000. But in working on the book, I became a Christian. And I left libertarianism and became really a conservative. And I discovered one by one these pillars, these landmarks that are the landmarks of our great civilization. And if we want it to carry on for our posterity, there are these 5 principles that we need to advance, to resurrect in some cases.
Right, so your book is not just a history book. It's not just descriptive, it's prescriptive. You have some ideas on how we should go about saving the next century. So besides reading the book, what sort of, can you give us the shorthand version?
Yeah, I'll give you the 5 principles, the 5 unique landmarks that make Western civilization what it is. And that's number 1, the idea that we're made in the image and likeness of God, and that each human being has an incomparable dignity, beauty, and worth. That is very unique. And that is the foundation of our civilization, which really goes back to the incarnation of Jesus Christ. Well, it changed how we see the human person. Number 2, the transcendent moral order. The transcendent moral order is the idea that there's a law above the laws of man, which we completely threw away in the West in the late 19th and 20th century. It wasn't until Nuremberg, when they wanted to try the Nazis for crimes that they did not commit. They didn't break any laws, so they had to rediscover the transcendent moral order, or the superpositive law, or traditionally what we would call the natural law. And so I think it's a good idea that we proclaim this transcendent moral order, this natural law, before the next Holocaust, not after. Number 3 is subsidiarity, which is very important. This principle alone would have prevented most of the horrors of the 20th century, and that is to grow those free institutions of civil society between the person and the state. that the further an institution is from the person, the less influence it should have in the life of the person. 4 is the humane economy. Just social order is grounded in private property rights, set within the commonwealth of the family and the broader community, that we're stewards of property, but property rights are the foundation of a just social order. And then 5, that our personal actions should correspond to the common good. Not that every action that isn't in the interest of the common good should be criminalized, but that really that most people, to have a humane society, most of us have to think of, how do my decisions impact my friends, my neighbor, my family, my children? And when I act, I should act in not only my own self-interest, but I should also think about the common good. And so those are the 5 principles of a truly humane and just civilization. And we don't need to just appeal to Christian revelation to come to understand this. Any honest student of history who looks at the 20th century can see that each one of these 5 principles, the tyrants and thugs of the 20th century had to remove before you could have total war, genocide, or democide.
Jason Jones, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much. And our website is saveourcentury.com.
All right, saveourcentury.com. Thanks for watching The Christian Post.